introduce to you now. He's going to speak to you for a while, don't worry. He's got to go at 8 o'clock, but he's not going to hog the floor and speak to you till 8 o'clock. He's going to make his address, and then afterwards, any questions, I'll just manage the questions. Everyone who's got a question to ask. But one thing I'll ask you to do now, when you're asking a question, please ask a question, because if you make a statement, you're just going to use up the time. All right? Please welcome the Mayor of West Midlands, Andy Street.
Well, Desmond, I'm not going to use a microphone. I'll try to project my voice. If the gentleman at the back would put his hand up if you can't hear me, though, that would be really helpful. So, thank you very much, sir. So, first of all, you've achieved the thing I thought was impossible. When I looked at this agenda and I saw I was item 14 on the agenda, I thought we're never going to be anywhere near on time, but we are. So well done, Desmond. So, first thing I want to say is just a huge thank you for welcoming me. To return to Panelcroft, I came here on a snowy day about 5 winters ago, and it was a lovely evening with the community in the centre then, so it's genuinely lovely to be back. And I should also say it's brilliant to be at the community forum and to thank the two chairs who've spoken. I am a huge believer that whatever's going on in national politics, in city politics, in regional politics, actually the thing that matters most is what's going on in the immediate community. And that needs people to step forward and take responsibility. So genuinely, thank you for being really brilliant examples of doing that. And when you talk about spreading to King's Standing and Chelmsley, that's just brilliant that you are doing that. Now then, what I thought I should do, I should say a little bit about what my job's about. I should say a little bit about how it relates to what's going on here. Then I'm going to let you ask me any questions you want at all. Nothing is off limits, and I'll try to answer them honestly. First thing I should say about the job, though, is my office is actually in Newtown. Only just, but it is technically in Newtown, in Summer Lane. Now, the reason I pull that out is some of the issues that you are dealing with every day. What's the state of litter collection? What's the waste management on the streets? What's the safety of people actually walking to and fro in the area? What's the public transport like? All of those things matter to our employees, just as they matter to you as well. So I'm not in a sense coming here as a stranger who doesn't understand the issues on the ground here, because every day we're working right on the edge of Newtown there. In terms of the content of my job, some people say the lovely thing about being mayor is you can do whatever you want. And you go on the television and sort of champion the West Midlands on any time you want. And that's partly true. But there are 3 key parts of the job that I think really matter to people's day-to-day life. And I want to say a little bit about them to kick off. The first is that I am, if any one person across the region is responsible for jobs and skills and training, it is me. And I know that there are huge issues with particularly young people being unemployed in Newtown. It has been for decades, and it is still, in many senses, a very big challenge. I just want to give you 2 statistics, though, that will get you to think about what we've got to do, and then I'll tell you what we are doing about it. Across the whole of the West Midlands today, there are 125,000 people claiming unemployment benefit. That's a lot of people. It's about 6.1% of the population. But on the very same day, there are 114,000 job vacancies. So the issue you can see straight away is not that the jobs aren't there, but for some reason we're not getting the people who are looking for those jobs into them. So what the real issue is about is how we train people to get the jobs that are there. And so what our responsibility is as a combined authority is to think, how are we going to help people get the training that they need? Last year, 65,000 people went through training provided by the Combined Authority. Now, when I say provided by the Combined Authority, it's ultimately funded by us, but it's probably through a local college, might be a private training provider, might be in a company that's doing something like a sector-based academy, we call it, where you actually go and work in the construction industry, the digital industry, or something like that. So my sort of pledge to all of you here today is if you've got someone in your family who's one of those unfortunate people claiming benefit, and I'm sure lots of you do have, that if you go to the job centre, either down on Summer Hill or indeed at Perry Bar. You'll be able to talk about those training schemes that exist and give people an opportunity for a new start on life, because they are looking through those work coaches to put people into those schemes. Now, I fully accept it's not as easy as that. Frankly, if it was, we'd already tackled this big issue. But what I can look you in the eye and say is we're trying to provide the training for those jobs of the future. And we've got lots of lovely examples where people might have been in what you might colloquially call a dead-end job, but they actually got retrained in one of the jobs of the future, maybe in nursing or healthcare or in digital, and actually have then been able to push their career on. So it is there, even though I know it's proving very hard to reach everyone who needs it. Now, and if anyone wants to ask me any questions about that, please do. The other thing I tried to do here is just support some of your best schools, whether it be the Holt School or whether it be the Newtown School, and thinking I've spent time with the teams there, particularly sixth form teams, thinking about aspirations. Because so much of this is about young people having the right aspiration for the right career in the future. Second thing I want just to talk about is housing. Now, as everybody in the room knows, I don't run the City Council's housing stock, I don't run the planning system. But what I do have responsibility for is making sure that we are building in total enough new homes, and I'll say a little bit about affordable homes within that number as well. Because the big issue across Birmingham is, as the population grows, are we producing enough new homes? And the good news on that is the West Midlands is the only place in the country now hitting its annual housing target. And I'm a Conservative mayor, but I actually on this give full credit to all of the councils in the West Midlands, cross-party, because we're working together. And last year we hit a record number of new homes, 17,500, which was ahead of our target. The way that happens is obviously planning permissions have to be given, working with the councils, developers have to come forward. We actually supply cash that we've won from government. We've got about £600 million now from government to help developers where they've got to clean up an old brownfield site, make the development possible. So a number of them that you see around, I'll call it the gun quarter, are examples of those brownfield developments where we've been working with them on closing that gap. And the really good news is that we're improving the proportion of those homes that are affordable homes. Again, it's what people always say to me, never mind the total, Andy, what about the affordable homes? And the figure across the West Midlands is any funding, any scheme that we fund, we have a minimum of 20% affordable, and we're now achieving, and we'll talk to the media about this next week, a rate of 29% affordable. And people who watch this across the country will tell you that 29% affordable across everything is a good going rate. It's not yet as good as I like it, but it's good. And then the last thing I wanted to, actually penultimate thing I wanted to say about housing is that I'm determined to get one of the real eyesores in Newtown sorted out for a redevelopment that I hope by the end of this year we will say we've co-funded. You'll all know the old Brandau Volume Works on the Ring Road, which has stood derelict for probably at least 25 years now. We have an active scheme with a developer we are looking to fund to get that diggers in the ground, hopefully by the end of this year. The government have just given us in our devolution deal £100 million more for more schemes like those that we've already done. And when they said to me, which scheme do you really want to happen with this? Obviously it doesn't need 100 million, but I always wanted to be the poster child for it. That scheme on the Newtown Ring Road is the one I want to be, the real poster child for this, because if ever there was dereliction in the middle of the community, there it is. And then the last thing I just want to explain about housing, and this is a slightly technical point, but again I think you'll be interested in it, going back to affordable. I said we were achieving that rate of 29%. What we have also done uniquely in the country is change how affordable is described. Most places in the country it's related to the price of property, either to rent or to buy. What we've done is said to every developer, it's not really relative. It doesn't matter about the price of the house. What matters is the income of the people who are likely to use it. So we define affordable as needing about 1/3 of your disposable income, whether you are going to buy it or whether you are going to rent it. We're the only people in the country to do that, and we have managed still to achieve that 29% on that number. And then the last thing in the main part of my job I thought I would mention is transport. Really important to have people get to work, get to shop, get to leisure, get to their friends, get to go to the hospital. And transport for the West Midlands that runs our buses, supports our trains, runs our trams, that ultimately reports to me. So I suppose in the nicest way, if the number 7 bus is late, it's my fault. And I get lots of correspondence from people about that. What we've tried to do on transport though, in the last 3 years since COVID, is we have tried to sustain all of the services. It sounds so simple, but you all know this. Patronage, number of people using public transport fell enormously through COVID. Has not yet built back to where it was before, but we're basically still running the same service at considerable public subsidy across the West Midlands. So whether it be our buses, whether it be our trams, or whether it be our trains, we're basically running that pre-COVID service. We've maintained all our concessionary fares, so whether it be the pensioners' passes, whether it be the young person's ticketing, all of that has all been maintained. And some of our key schemes like Workwise, free travel for people looking for work and in their first few weeks of work, or of course the advantage for those with disabilities as well. So we have sustained all of those pieces. And then the thing I'm most proud of in this cost of living period, we've also reduced, not just held, but we've reduced our bus fares. The bus is the staple of public transport, and the fares are now down to 2013 level, and we've now got the lowest bus fares of anywhere in the country outside of London. Now they are political choices that we have had to make, but the Combined Authority Board that I lead have decided to back all of those things. We understand good public transport is so important to the community. So those are the 3 key parts of my job with a little update on them where I think they're relevant. Of course, also in transport, we paid for the new station at Perry Bar for the games, and I hope people would say, although it was controversial, and I know there was great controversy when we met in the church hall up in Perry Bar about this a few years ago. We remember well. Oh, lovely. Hooray! There she said it. The wall. Okay, we will, if you want to pick that up with me afterwards, you're very, very welcome. But the point that we've just got there, actually improvements to the public transport along the Walsall Road, and indeed the investment in the terminus at One Stop, I hope people think it's genuinely good new investment. And then the last thing I did just want to pick up, because this is really an invitation to you. In your minutes of last time, Desmond very correctly mentioned that we managed to secure from the government the underspend on the Commonwealth Games. Commonwealth Games, basically the budget was about 870 million. It's a miracle, but we underspent the total budget by 95 million pounds. Do you ever hear someone standing up and saying we underspent? And that was a credit to everybody. And the story is that when that became clear that we'd underspent, I'm going to have a bit of sport here actually. I managed, it wasn't I, in that sentence, it is right to use the word I, spoke to, it was in Liz Truss's period as PM, you'll chuckle at this. She was PM, I spoke to her Chief of Staff and the Chancellor of the Exchequer and basically said, you cannot bring your conference to Birmingham until you give me that money, that underspend. And it took me 3 calls with them in the week before the conference. We did keep it, and the little bit of sport is that decision to give us that money is literally the only spending decision taken by Kwasi Kwarteng that stays to this day. So at least we got something right in that. But the point that Desmond was drawing out last time around is spot on right. It's no point in that money sitting in the bank. We've been going through all the sort of processes of how it's going to be spent, but we're very, very close to opening up for community organisations. We've put 20 million aside of it for community organisations to say these are their proposals, and everybody is absolutely determined that it should make a real difference on the ground. So if you are thinking of however small a project that you think would make a difference, particularly if it's got a sporting, well-being, health element to it, we will shortly be seeking those projects from the community. So thank you. That's all I wanted to cover, and we've got plenty of time for questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy.